Hey everybody, what's going on? Fabian for Liberty. FabianForLiberty.com is my website. I'm Fabian Calvo. Welcome, Trudgers of Truth. So in this video, I want to talk about something that you surely will never hear on the campaign trail. In fact, some of this is just breaking over the weekend. We'll start off with the Iranians now saying that they will no longer accept U.S. dollars to sell their oil. This is a big story. As you know, I've been talking about the global economic reset of the U.S. dollar, losing its world reserve currency. It's bound to happen. Already since 2008, we've had bilateral trade agreements where countries like Japan, like the Chinese, the Russians, most major economies of the East, Australia, all these other countries that are basically no longer using the dollar for global trade. But when it comes to oil, again, the petrodollar, all oil must be traded in U.S. dollars. Now, this is another thing that's bound to begin to crumble, and it's starting with the Iranians in this super Eastern blocs that I've been talking about for some time, the Iranians, the Russians, and the Chinese coming together, I believe, to undermine the U.S. economy. So instead of trading their oil in U.S. dollars, you have now the Iranians saying they're going to trade their oil in euros, which is significant because another story breaking over the weekend is how awful European banks are doing, down significantly this year alone. This year alone, in January, the bank index of Europe was down 24%. And, you know, just a few months ago, everyone was talking about how 2016 European banks were going to be doing so well because of the quantitative easing, because how great Mario Draghi's 0% interest rate and negative interest rate policies were doing. And it's been an absolute horror show. Because the truth is that, you know, these economists that, in essence, are social engineers of the economy, trying to micromanage the economy, trying to stop the free market from doing what it does, which is that eventually it's a wrecking ball and destroys all of the money manipulation, all of the phony creation of wealth. You know, another thing that I liked over the weekend, it's one of the things that I've said many times, you know, I disagree with roughly 85, if not 90% of what Bernie Sanders has to say. But over the weekend, he said a comment that I think was spot on, which is that the business of Wall Street is fraud. And I don't necessarily agree with that statement entirely. I think that there are legitimate businesses on Wall Street. Not all of it is fraud. But what we're talking about now with respect to the monopoly of the U.S. dollar, what we're talking about with quantitative easing programs, what we're talking about with 0%, ZIRP, 0% interest rate policies or negative interest rate policies, these are all smoke and mirrors to keep a propped up economy from falling apart. And then you have, in essence, the mainstream media talking about how it's a great economic recovery when we see job numbers were down last month. We see the debt in the U.S. has surpassed $19 trillion. And we begin to see signs of the Federal Reserve last week from their monthly meeting coming out and saying, look, there's a good possibility that we shouldn't have raised interest rates. We might have to go back to zero interest rates. And Janet Yellen already saying we might have to go to negative interest rates or some quantitative easing. So what does this all mean? Look, I think that you have more pressure on the U.S. dollar if the Iranians move forward and stop using the U.S. dollar to trade oil. You'll likely have other countries that follow suit. And why would the Iranians want to pay Washington a brokerage fee when the U.S. isn't creating anything in using that dollar? They're not doing anything. So of course they would bypass them. Any legitimate business owner, anyone with, room temperature IQ would do the same exact thing. Other countries will follow suit. In fact, the Iranians are trying to push OPEC into following suit, and OPEC basically can trade their oil in whatever currency that they choose to do so, which is the way it really should be. Now, this is a significant strain on the U.S. Dollar. You have the banks in Europe are in free fall. You have the U.S. economy here at home having major debt problems that will not be solved anytime soon. This is why I believe this year we'll continue to see another major stimulus event that happens. Likely, we could see negative interest rates happen in America. And it's also why we'll continue to see, in my opinion, these manipulated markets like the stock market, like the real estate market. There's a story that I'm going to do on the real estate market tomorrow or later this week, talking about how January sales of homes and mortgages and everything else was up over 2015. And again, it's not that the economy is doing better. It's that they're pulling out all the stops in manipulating the markets for when this last business cycle comes to an end. If you know anything about Austrian economics, you know that things work in a business cycle. It starts with, a depression or complete financial collapse, and then from there they rebuild. Things are better. There's growth, and then that growth slows down, and then you have, once again, another bust. This is the way a free market economy should work. Now, what's happened is since really 2001, the central planners, i.e. the Federal Reserve, haven't allowed the economy to function in a normal way, in a free market way. They've invented every single government stimulus program you could imagine, and what's happened is it's made the boom and bust cycles much larger. So we had a major bust in 2008, but the bust we'll see likely at the end of this year or in 2017 will make that one in 2008 pretty much look like a dress rehearsal. So anyways, I'm Fabian Calvo, Fabian for Liberty. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it with your friends, post it on social media. Thanks for watching. I'm out.